I went to a training with Jay and Elena, and I said, okay, so Jay, what's the best way? He said to me, what you have to do is you have to sit down and look at EEG after EEG after EEG after EEG. And that gave me the idea of starting the ground rounds. So I'm the one person who started the ground rounds, and then bar
Oh my God.
to COVID.
Legend,
But
man.
that that was born out of that training with him. And I said, well, I told a couple of my colleagues who were there and friends and said, well, why don't we start mentoring group with Jay? And this was back in 2014, I think. But what I would do is I would ask the people to send me the files before they send them to Jay too. And so I would run through the file myself. I would look at the EEG, make notes, and then see Jay go through it and see what I got right and where I was in agreement with him, and then or where he where so I was getting it right based on his analysis, and then what I was seeing. And that proved extremely valuable to my learning because it started giving me the confidence to not rely on him so much, you know, um, because he's either unavailable because he's so busy, or one day he will decide he's going to fully retire. Although I don't see that happening, or for different reasons, he might just not feel well and not have the ability to do this, and therefore look at the EGs, look at myself, and then have it compared to what Jay was saying was extremely useful. And that's something I would recommend to the people who want to learn. Do it on your own, then have your mentor run through it, see where you get it right, and reinforce that. See where you got it wrong, and ask why you're getting it wrong. Be humble about it, and also pick up the new things. And one of the things I really love about EEG is that it does never get old. You've done couple hundred, a few thousand after a few years, and you think you have it figured out, and then something else completely new comes. And that's the beauty of it. I could be doing this for the rest of my life, and I will never stop learning. And that's what I love about neuroscience. It's just such an endless, limitless, infinite field that there's room for plenty of new knowledge. And especially as it pertains to the EEG. One of my interests um, is now looking at the brain through exercise. I've been very interested in exercise and sports, and one of my interests is to see how exercise impacts the brain. So it would be interesting to see how, if we could find a way to measure, the brain in real time as we exercise, right away after we exercise, and looking for those changes would be quite fascinating. And I do believe that the EEG holds clues to it. I believe that what we have to discover in terms of exercise and physical activity is a lot. I don't think we've seen everything. And to me, exercise is one of the best forms of medicine. I think that exercise is one of those things that really is important in terms of anybody's mental health. Yet is one of the things that a lot of people don't incorporate into their lifestyle. And more than, to me, exercise is more than looking and feeling fit and being fit. To me, exercise really does have an impact on the brain. And I think the EEG and the ERPs hold the clues to that. So that's sort of my next line of work, where my next projects lie, just to try to understand this connection.
And so what changes are you seeing in the EEG with exercise? And is it, I saw on your Instagram video you had the cap on. What are the challenges in recording it? And do you feel like you're getting any usable data?
I've seen some interesting things, particularly with people who have beta, persistent beta and beta spindles in their EEG. And I noticed that when they do roughly 30 to 45 minutes of exercise at a certain intensity, I see a reduction post exercise in the beta spindles. Now, will that hold? We don't know. Will that hold, and for how long? That remains to be seen, and that would be the next phase in the research, right? But right immediately after exercise, I can see some people getting the beta spindles dramatically reduced, which to me speaks volumes and makes me think that there's the BDNF that gets secreted in the brain, the growth factor that gets secreted in the brain, is fighting the inflammation. To me, beta spindles are a byproduct of neuroinflammation, and the byproduct having all this chemical, all this inflammatory cytokines affecting the brain because of stress, because of COVID, or because of your lifestyle, or a combination of all three, right? And when I see that, I do think that that BDNF is acting up and is targeting all those regions in the thalamus where the cortisol goes and binds into the receptors and starts getting your glia to get primed. And I have also seen changes in perfusion. I've seen people with high amplitude theta waves, either localized somewhere frontal cortex or a little bit distributed everywhere, somewhat diffuse. And after exercise, I see a reduction. The amplitude of those low frequencies drop, and people report feeling sharper and more alert, and being able to feel better. So this is mostly anecdotal, and of course it needs to be repeated under the proper settings. And my idea is just to be able to develop a test that would incorporate the cognitive aspects, then have people to run through different exercise programs, and then test for that with repeated measures, not only immediately after, but then after a week of exercise, after a month of exercise, and compared to neurofeedback, and have a group that compares neurofeedback and exercise to placebo. So again, it's just really exciting because the possibilities are there, and they're basically endless. And I also have an interest in seeing what form of exercise would be best suited for people's brain. Do some people benefit more from cardio? Do some people benefit more from the high intensity interval training? Do some people benefit more from strength training? And so it would be interesting to see which form of exercise is better for what type of brain pattern. Even tied it up to Jay's work with phenotypes. So it's exciting, and that's an area where I'm going to start venturing more into.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the phenotypes notion, because it's interesting, like this idea that exercise, even though it's creating more blood flow and more oxygenation to the brain, that for some people, if they have this sort of problematic or pathological excess of beta activity, it can help reduce that. But then I also think about, like, I've definitely felt like just low energy, low mood. I go for a run and I feel very much energized, which just intuitively I would think has something to do with probably increasing the alpha amplitude, probably increasing the alpha peak as well, potentially. So yeah, it's an interesting question of which forms of exercise are helpful for which types of phenotypes. And also, if the phenotypes model needs to expand to include more sort of like transient states, right? That depending on what state you're in, maybe like a different level of intensity is appropriate.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a very interesting idea. And potentially the way I see it is, if we could have somebody on a bike pedaling at a specific frequency, and we could be training the brain at the same time with some form of neurofeedback, to me that's the gold standard. That's dream to have. We can train brainwaves at the same time we're exercising to enhance the experience even further would be great. And it's out of these ideas that these products are developed, that new gadgets come. And I know that the challenge with as it comes to brainwave training and exercise is just how do you control for movement and noise. But again, you have to start somewhere. So you start testing the notion, failing a few times, learning from your mistakes, getting frustrated and getting it right, hopefully. But I do see the field of exercise integrating with the field of neurofeedback in a in quite an exquisite way. I think that down the road we're going to see people at the gym not only lifting weights but having gadgets on their heads that are also enhancing the brainwave experience for them. Whether it's for performance or whether it's for their depression or their anxiety or maybe for all of the above.
Yeah, and so what sorts of neurofeedback would you combine with exercise?
Wow, that's a very good question. I would like to explore human cephalography. And one of the things I like about a human cephalography is that it's much less sensitive to blinks and muscle tension. And that would provide with an advantage, which is you don't have to contend with as much noise as you would do with traditional EEG biofeedback. Where you do, traditional electrical EEG, and you're dealing um, with the amplitudes. The one thing you have to contend with is noise, and EMG somewhat reduces that. Um, and
And so just for the viewers who are unfamiliar with that term, how is HEG different in terms of the technology from EEG?
Oh, well, with traditional neurofeedback, you normally are working on the electrical discharge. So you're seeing the electrical pattern, which is the brain waves and the tracing that you see on the screen. And that's just a byproduct of your neurons in a specific region, or a combination of regions firing and communicating in real time. And you tap into that pattern and you optimize it to help people do different things, sleep better, or not feel as depressed, or slow down their rumination and being fixated on negative thoughts, or just be happier, or just be able to focus better. And HEG human cephalography, it's a form of neurofeedback that strictly trains blood flow into a specific region of the brain. Now, it's normally dedicated to the prefrontal sides, and it's the research shows it's quite efficient for anything that has to do with prefrontal slowing. So anything that has slow alpha frequencies and the high amplitude theta delta waves that would slow your frontal cortex and cause you to be depressed or distracted, you can enhance by teaching the brain to get more blood flow to that region and therefore enhance the functioning. So you're not working so much with the electrical communication between neurons, you're working with the metabolic communication between neurons. And obviously there needs to be blood flow, there needs to be perfusion to the network for the neurons to fire efficiently too. So uh, you would be indirectly enhancing the electrical communication between the neurons by enhancing the metabolic and cardiovascular process, which is getting more blood flow and getting more oxygen to that specific region. And I've used HEG with great success for migraine headaches. I've had clients who've been able to eliminate migraines they've been suffering from for many years, to clients who go from having 2 or 3 migraines in a month to having a migraine every 6 months to every year. And before it would last 2 to 3 weeks, last a day or two, and they're back to their normal life. And also with the great added value of medication reduction or medication elimination. And because I've seen exercise, and the research that I've read, that I've seen that exercise enhances blood flow to the brain, well, it would stand to reason that human cephalography would be a good way of exploring. And again, with the added value that you're minimizing the noise that you have to deal with in the signal. And I was at the BFE conference in Italy, and they were selling this HEG device, which is it's an optimized version from Herschel Tuning's headband. Only this time they made it wireless, and I think that's even more interesting because you just play the headband and kind of wirelessly connect to the laptop or the tablet, so you can have people looking at the data and working on it in real time. Now, would I want to see traditional EEG be used with exercise at the same time? Yeah. Uh, and again, it might be a reality in a few years' time.
And so what's the name of this new HEG device? Because I only got into it about 10 years ago. and it's designs running in BioExplorer, and it worked. It was, it was kind of a little clunky, and it definitely seems like a technology that's amenable to being more portable, since it's really just, the LED and the sensor, and it's kind of just like plotting a value on a graph, and you're either training it up or training it down.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to get back to you with the name because I'm drawing a blank
Okay.
right now. But it's developed by this German company, and what I like it is that, as you were saying in the beginning, especially with Herschel's headband, they would use BioExplorer, which is this sort of sophisticated but at the same time very complicated software. They're not using Brew Explorer anymore. They developed their own software, and is extremely user friendly. The one of the things that I like about it is how user friendly it is, and you can train with games and videos. So it gives you that range of capability, which I like a lot too. Now, the other thing that I like they've done is that they made it, or they built it so that it's compatible with the Evo TPS. And I don't know if you know about the Evo TPS, but it's a portable biofeedback device that you place on the fingertip, and it reads your skin conductance, the sweat response, the temperature, and heart rate variability at the same time. So you can actually do HEG neurofeedback at the same time you're doing peripheral biofeedback. And they developed this into a way that they have integrated the Evo TPS with their own HEG software, and it's really nice. And to me, the main thing is how user friendly it is for the clinician, but also for the user, for the client in mind. And it's therefore, the reason I got it is because as I was thinking in how to integrate it with exercise, I thought that it would probably provide me with some really good ideas. I can test it, and then start developing sort of a new prototype from there.
So what do you think? Should people just go out and buy this thing and start working on it, or should they get a brain map first and work with a trainer?
Oh, I think that it's always important to work with a clinician. The one, and it's very important that you brought it up, because the one concern that I have is all this neurogaming devices that get advertised as neurofeedback. All these affordable gadgets that you pay $200, $300 that they market as neurofeedback, but they're anything but. Um, it's like saying, do dental surgery yourself. Here's the kit, and we'll show you the video and you can learn how to do it. I mean, we're talking about the human brain, and this is a very delicate organ, and is a very delicate subject. And sometimes I've had colleagues in the past approach me and say, oh, Santiago, I brought a neurofeedback device. I can't think this happened to me I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. I was doing a presentation for some sports psychologists back when I was living in Colombia, where I'm from. And this colleague approaches me, and he says he's really excited. He says, Santiago, I have this neurofeedback device, and I wanted to show it to you. And I want you to see it. I say, okay, just bring it up. And so he brings it up, and he pulls out, this neuro gaming device. I knew which one it was. And it was basically an FP1 or an FP2 sensor. And so I told him, okay, well, so I start throwing the terms at him, and I say, so show me the amplitude. Is this showing you synchrony? Can you see the values of power in the brainwaves? And he looks at me like a deer in the headlights, and he goes, what are you talking about? I said, well, that's precisely my problem. I said, Pete, you guys, I know you're not doing this deliberately, but you're buying this thinking you're doing neurofeedback, and you have no idea what I'm talking to you about. So I ended up telling him, if next time you throw a party, instead of taking out the twister, take this device out and have people play with it, and you'll be the soul of the party, you will be the life of the party, but that's as far as it goes. And, he was disappointed to hear that. And then, I heard through some mutual colleagues that he started saying that I had humiliated him, and, that I had destroyed his dreams of being a neurofeedback practitioner just because I told him, look, this is neurofeedback. And so unfortunately, there are all these companies marketing these wearables that are anything but neurofeedback. There are some good wearables with really solid technology behind them, with the proper, that meet the proper requirements. But there's a ton of them being sold, and so yours is a very important question, because my recommendation is, if you want to train your brain, you need to go to a professional. You really need to go to a professional who will do your QEEG, will read your brain waves, and will help you understand what's going on, and then will prescribe the most appropriate protocol for you. I think it's very dangerous that you can go online and buy these things, like buying on the counter medication, and the field should get more strict. I think it's very dangerous, because I have seen people's EEGs, and they have epileptiform discharges they didn't know about. And they never had a seizure, they never went into a convulsion, but it's affecting them, and they didn't know about it. And so think about buying equipment, using it, and potentially harming yourself, because you don't know what your brain is doing, you don't know what it looks like. So I think it's very important to find somebody who's trained, who's certified, who's paid the price to be at the place where they are, because they provide the ethical and responsible value of working with you in a very, and again, in a responsible and ethical way. So my recommendation is, find somebody. And if you want these devices, if you want to entertain your friends at your party or bar mitzvah or whatever, then buy these devices, but not for clinical work, because it's just very dangerous.
Well, it's funny you mention that, because I heard about neurofeedback on the Joe Rogan podcast back 6 years ago. He had Andrew Hill on as a guest.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went on the Reddit neurofeedback page, and I found people who were doing tag sync, theta alpha gamma synchrony, designed by Douglas Daly, that was running in BioExplorer with the 4-channel amplifier. And so I got it. And, people were describing that they'd had powerful meditative experiences, and that they were seeing improvements in their lives. And it was, a generalized protocol, kind of like front of the head, back of the head, FCPZ. And so I ran it for a while, and I didn't get any improvement. If anything, it seemed to make me a little more kind of foggy. And I didn't really know what I was doing. And what's interesting is, after 3 or 4 years of not really making progress, maybe making a little bit of decline, I decided it was time to try to get at least a very basic brain map using the Brain Trainer platform with Pete Van Dusen, where you can use a 4-channel amp to get all the different sites. And it turns out I had a good deal of excessive frontal slow activity, alpha and theta. And that when you do the design the wrong way, you can actually just increase the amplitude of that frontal slow activity. So, I'm grateful for that energy of sort of the DIYer, because that's what got me here. And, I wouldn't have, I had to make those mistakes in order to want to find a mentor, and then eventually want to start getting real training with real professionals. But also it's also the case that it didn't really help me, and probably was a waste of time, and maybe did some harm for the first 3 or 4 years that I was even doing this stuff. So it's interesting. It's a kind of a bizarre ethical conundrum, and in some way, I don't want to tell people absolutely that they should never experiment on themselves in any way. But also, I think people need to understand that, you don't know what you don't know. And there can be potentially a lot of things lurking underneath the surface in your brain. And like you said, the title of Jay's talk at the most recent conference was to expect the unexpected. And that in a lot of people who are not diagnosed with epilepsy, who have no outward presentations of it, they have, spike and slow features, as they're called, or, epileptiform discharges, or, epileptiform content. And so when you're dealing with that, neurofeedback can potentially really make things worse if you don't choose the protocol the right way. So have you seen any of that? Have you come across anyone in your clinic who has done neurofeedback before, but maybe through sort of like a canned protocol or something where they got maybe not positive results?
Yes, yeah, and not here in Singapore, but in Colombia, I saw a few cases like that. And I had patients who came to me who had previously done neurofeedback at other clinics, and they said when I would say to them, we need to do a brain map, they would say to me, "Oh, I did a brain map at that place." And I would say, "Okay, just bring me the report." And they would bring me the report, and it would be just numbers, not EEG tracings. And I said, "Well, what kind of brain map did they do?" "Oh, I just they place a couple of electrodes, and you know, and they say I have anxiety." I said, "Well, you look at the report, there's only numbers." So I would see, values for amplitudes for beta and delta and theta. I said, "Look, this is nothing. This is not telling me anything. It's just numbers." And the numbers don't say anything. The squiggles tell you the story, And it turned out that when I did the 19 channel key on these people, um, oftentimes with the brain map that they got at this other place, they would be diagnosed as having anxiety because they had, FP1 excessive high beta, or maybe T4 excessive beta. And, it was just EMG. It was just muscle tension mimicking fast beta activity. So I would put the cap on and show the EEG tracing to the client, explain, look, in this previous report, they were saying that you had a lot of beta here and here, but if you notice, it's just the muscle tension. And sometimes they would say you have delta frequencies, right? And it would be blinking, and they don't have a filter to control for the eye blinks, right? And so they would look like they had a lot of delta. And so yes, I have come across that many times, experiences like that. I've had brain map, and it's nothing but that. I can remember clearly also a practitioner from a different city contacted me, and he had purchased an amplifier. I don't remember the name right now, but it's an amplifier that commonly has BioExplorer as its software.
So there's the Neurobit Optima is a common one,
Yeah.
and also the Pocket Neurobics QWiz.
Yeah, it was the Neurobit, right? And
Yeah.
So this psychologist contacts me and says, I've seen your YouTube videos, and I want to train with you. I bought this equipment for neurofeedback, that's brain mapping. And I said, okay, well, show me which one it is. He sends me the pictures, the Neurobit, and I told him, look, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to send you my YouTube channel videos. I'm going to send you a few links to things that I've written online. It's not formal research, where it's just a couple of blogs that I've written and all that. Read through it. Let me know what you think. And about 2 days later, he contacts me, and he's very disappointed. He says, "You know what? You drive a Ferrari, and I just found out I bought a lemon. I wish I could have contacted you before, because I feel that I've been ripped off." So again, I'm not trying to point fingers at anybody, naming names, but I think we need to be more responsible when it comes to that. You cannot promote something as a brain map that is not a brain map.
Yeah.
You just put in electrodes and blindly look at numbers. You're not looking at EEG tracings. You're not understanding if that's the difference between an eye blink and real delta, or real fast brainwave activity and muscle tension. And the numbers don't give you that. You need to have a equipment that has the proper filters. And I've seen that a few times. And I know that I'm in South America, I'm some distributors' least favorite person, just because I mentioned these things, of course. So I'm sort of killing their cash cow, but I'm not doing it deliberately to hurt anybody. I'm just explaining things the way I understand them and how I
Yeah.
see that, the how I understand neurofeedback needs to be done.
Right. Well, and it's interesting. I've come across the same situation where it's like someone will say, "Oh yeah, I have a QEEG." And even on Reddit, if you go on the Reddit neurofeedback, people say, "Hey, I have anxiety. Here's a picture from my QEEG report." And you can just tell that the person who collected this didn't put the cap on correctly because the channels are wildly different from one another. They're interpreting muscle as real brainwave stuff, and it's incomplete, and people think that, oh, if I got a QEEG, then that means that we're ready to go,
Yeah.
And my experience is like, at least with this, the stuff that I find online, and also from people who come into the clinic that I'm working at, like most of the past assessments are not usable. Um,
Yeah.
like a solid majority of them are like, I would not be proud if this was my work. Um, yeah, and what's interesting, yeah, so like about the 4-channel assessments is, I think in some ways so the brain trainer system, it encourages people to think more about the data and more about the different brain regions and more about these different, ratios and coherence. It plays in a lot of the concepts, and it is a more affordable thing. But then the question you have to ask yourself is like, well, is it really that great of a value if for not much more money you could actually get a 20-channel or 19-channel EEG, where you can also inspect the raw data and have data in the standardized format where you could then send it to someone else for a second opinion and have them work it up in whatever of the dozen standard clinical software tools that there are. Um, and, yeah, I just have a difficult time relying on something that's auto artifacted, like I want to be able to look at the raw EEG, and I also want to be able to look at all the different sites at the same time, because a lot of the times that's the only way you can differentiate what's coming from the brain versus like what's not.
Right.
um, so yeah, it's an interesting world we live in. Um, there's a lot of crap out there.
There is, yeah. And I think you and I have seen it in the Facebook groups where somebody posts, like you say, the pictures, they post the topographies, and and they say, okay, I got a brain map, and this is, can you tell me what it is? And the first thing I would say is, without the raw data, at least I cannot tell you, what with the raw, without the raw tracings, I cannot tell you what it is. So, can you please post the raw data, the EEG? And some people will go, well, they never gave me that. So it's very likely that the person who recorded that map um, just looks at the topographies and has no idea how to read the EEG or what to make of it.
Yeah.
And sometimes I've told people, go and ask for the EDF file for the raw at the place you recorded it. And a lot of these places just flat out deny the client the possibility of having these files. And to me, that's a clear sign that they don't know what they're doing. They bought the system, and oh, let's bypass the EEG. Let's just circumvent reading the EEG. The maps will tell us the information. And so they record these EEGs probably with a lot of eye blinks, and muscle tension that show up as activity that is not real brainwave activity. And that's very delicate. And unfortunately, it happens more often than not. So I think that a lot of it stems from the fact that, I mean, you've been working with Jay for some time now. I've been doing it for 10 years, and reading EEGs is not an easy task. It takes a lot of persistence. It takes dedication. It takes learning how to deal with the frustration, because reading EEGs can be very frustrating, especially when you're starting. You look at those squiggly lines, and it might as well be explained to you in Hebrew because you have no idea what you're looking at. But if you stick with it, it's worth it. But I don't think that everybody has the motivation, the interest, the stamina to work with the EEG. It's not easy work. I have seen colleagues who, I have consulted with. There's a particular colleague somewhere who I recently learned decided to change their MITSAR for an automated system. So they started using MITSAR, and they consulted with me a couple of times. I went to their city and I started teaching them, and then after a while they just succumbed to probably the frustration of having to read EEGs, and they just changed for an automated system. And I mean that's the right. No, no, no. I don't. It's not brain mass. It was a different one. I don't know which one it was really. Um, it's one of those automated systems. Again, you put 2 or 3 electrodes and they throw you that. It's not, and it's, as far as I understand, it's not reading the raw tracings, nor at least the way a proper amplifier would anyway.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's a lot to learn. I think for a lot of people, it can feel intimidating. And also, some of these more automated systems can feel very alluring because they create reports that look nice with lots of 3-dimensional images, and kind of spits out a whole plan and a whole diagnosis. It seems very official.
Yeah, it's full of noise in the signal. So yeah. And it's easy. You bring another important point, because it's just about aesthetics. If it looks pretty, then it sells. And it's not about that. I mean, I've done work with clients in which I show them the topography so that they can see some images, but I based everything out of the EEG. And I just show them the images because I can see the look of confusion. So I go, okay, let me show you these images which come from the squiggly lines that will help you understand better. And once I do that, they do know that. But I don't jump into the topography. I base everything out of the EEG tracings.
Well, Santiago, you've been generous with your time, so I don't want to keep you any longer. And I know it's getting late there. You're probably ready to have a drink out on the balcony.
Yeah, enjoy some nice. It's Singapore can be really hot and humid, and we've been having some rain, which makes the weather a lot cooler. So that's actually a good idea. Enjoy some cool evenings. And thank you for inviting me. This has been a lot of fun. I'm really honored. So thank you for it.
Yeah, man. Well, you're my first official guest on the channel.
Oh, great.
First of thousands, hopefully. And
great.
yeah,
I know it's gonna do very well.
Yeah, I'm just excited about all this stuff, and like there's a lot of this field, it's growing really fast, and to me, you're one of the people that's doing it right. And
thank you.
We got to think about all these issues carefully. And I appreciate your, inspiring message to do the work and really have the courage to learn it. So
well, I'm honored to be the very first guest. That's so hope it's a good omen for you and the podcast.
Oh yeah,
and
definitely, man.
Let's do it again soon.
Yeah, let's talk again soon, man.
All right, take care.
Take care.
See you later. Bye-bye.
See ya.